Have you noticed how life shifts as we get older? The things that once felt so important, like keeping up with a large circle of friends, gradually lose their grip. And you know what? That's perfectly natural. In fact, by the time you reach 70, you may discover that friendships aren't as necessary as they once seemed. Now that might sound surprising, maybe even a little unsettling at first. After all, we're raised to believe that staying socially connected is the secret to happiness, especially in our later years. But when you take a closer look, something becomes clear. There's real peace, strength, and even health benefits in letting go of friendships that no longer serve you. Today, I'm going to share 6 reasons why it's not only okay, but often better, to stop chasing friendships after 70. This isn't about isolation, it's about freedom. It's about learning to live life on your own terms, without the unnecessary pressure, expectations, or emotional weight that outdated friendships sometimes bring. And by the end of this, you might just find a new sense of calm, a deeper appreciation for your own company, and a renewed understanding of what truly matters most at this stage in life. So stay with me. Let's start with the first reason, and it's a powerful one that may shift the way you see yourself. Reason 1, you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. One of the greatest freedoms that comes with age is this: you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone. Think back to your younger years. How often did friendships feel like a game of validation, trying to fit in, impress others, or be included? Whether it was keeping up appearances at work, staying invited to social gatherings, or being liked in certain circles, there was always this unspoken pressure to be seen, to belong. But now, you've lived enough life to know better. You've built your legacy. You've overcome challenges, weathered storms, and created a life filled with experiences. At this point, you don't need anyone else's approval to define your value. The truth is, true fulfillment doesn't come from being accepted by others. It comes from accepting yourself, and that's a gift only age and experience can give. I remember Harold, a retired executive in his early 70s. Most of his life was spent in crowded boardrooms, business dinners, and social events that felt more like obligations than real connections. The moment he stepped away from his career, something became painfully clear. Those friendships were built on convenience, not meaning. At first, Harold felt compelled to keep those ties alive. After all, wasn't that what people did? Call old colleagues, plan lunches, send holiday cards. But eventually he paused and asked himself a powerful question. What am I really holding on to? The answer surprised him. Many of those relationships had never been about true friendship. They were about status, work, and keeping up appearances. So Harold made a choice. He let go. Instead of filling his calendar with coffee dates he didn't enjoy, he turned inward. He picked up hobbies he'd long forgotten. He spent quiet mornings reading, taking walks in the park, rediscovering what it felt like to live for himself. And you know what he found? Freedom, relief, a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. No more small talk, no more draining conversations, no more chasing approval. For the first time, Harold wasn't trying to impress anyone, and that, he realized, is what true freedom feels like. So if you've ever caught yourself wondering whether you should maintain a friendship just because it's what you're supposed to do, ask yourself this: am I doing this because it fills my soul or because it fills my calendar? At this stage of life, you've earned the right to live without proving anything to anyone. You don't need a crowd to validate your worth. You are enough, exactly as you are. Reason 2, peace becomes more valuable than socializing. Something subtle but powerful happens as you grow older. The constant need to socialize begins to fade, and in its place, you find yourself craving something deeper: peace. In our younger years, being busy often felt like a badge of honor. The endless gatherings, phone calls, group outings, they made life feel full. Social calendars were packed because staying connected was how we measured our place in the world. But over time, the noise that once felt exciting can start to feel exhausting. You begin to notice how draining certain conversations are, how some people only call to complain, how repetitive the stories become. And slowly you start to ask yourself, do I really need this anymore? Margaret, a vibrant woman of 74, reached that crossroads. For most of her life, she was the glue that held her friend group together, organizing lunches, returning every call, never missing a birthday. Her days were full, but strangely, her heart wasn't. What used to feel like joyful connection now felt like obligation. The same conversations, the same gossip, the same rehearsed complaints about life, health, and the past. After every gathering, Margaret felt more drained than uplifted. Until one afternoon, sitting at yet another lunch table filled with small talk, she had a quiet realization. I don't have to do this anymore. That simple thought changed everything. Margaret started to give herself permission to say no. No to meetups that didn't excite her. No to phone calls that felt more like emotional labor. No to carrying friendships that had long since run their course. And what replaced those hours? Time she truly cherished. Walks through the park without checking her phone. Afternoons lost in books she'd been meaning to read for years. Quiet moments in her garden where she could hear her own thoughts, clear and free. What surprised Margaret most wasn't how little she missed the constant socializing. It was how peaceful her life became once she stopped filling it with noise. And here's the beautiful truth. Peace is not loneliness. It's the gift of choosing calm over chaos. It's the freedom of no longer managing other people's expectations or sacrificing your energy just to keep up with conversations that no longer serve you. By this stage in life, you've earned that peace. You no longer need to explain yourself or feel guilty for prioritizing your own well-being. It's okay to say, I'd rather sit quietly with my thoughts than fill my time with empty conversations. Because here's what most people overlook. When you stop chasing connection for the sake of connection, you make space for something far richer, connection with yourself. So if you've found yourself pulling back lately, saying no more often, choosing silence over social obligation, don't feel guilty. You're not withdrawing from life. You're stepping into a new, beautiful chapter, one where peace leads the way. And trust me, that's one of the greatest freedoms aging can offer. Reason 3, fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. Here's a quiet truth many of us learn as we age. The more people you keep around out of habit, the more likely you are to feel disappointed. You see, friendships, no matter how good they once were, carry expectations. There's the hope that someone will call you back, that they'll check in, remember important dates, or show up when it matters. But too often, that's not what happens. Maybe you felt it too, waiting by the phone for someone who promised to call and didn't, or reaching out, making the effort, only to realize you're the only one doing the heavy lifting. At this stage in life, you start seeing things more clearly. Some people you called friends were only there when it was convenient, and many relationships you worked so hard to keep going were never truly mutual. That realization stings, but it also frees you. William knows this feeling well. At 78, he looked back and realized his phone had grown quieter. Friends he once saw weekly became voices he barely heard anymore. At first it hurt. He wondered, did I do something wrong? Did I matter less now that I wasn't useful to them? But as he sat with those feelings, something powerful dawned on him. It wasn't about him. It was life, simply doing what life does, pulling people in different directions. And for the first time, William stopped trying, stopped chasing friendships that only survived because he kept watering them. And in that quiet space, he felt something he hadn't in years, relief. No more wondering why the phone didn't ring. No more guilt for not reaching out. No more disappointment when old friends couldn't show up the way he hoped. Here's the secret most people overlook. Fewer friendships don't mean less love. They mean less disappointment. When you stop scattering your energy trying to keep weak ties alive, you protect your peace. You stop setting yourself up for the hurt that comes when people can't meet you where you are anymore. Instead, you create space for the relationships that truly matter. The ones that don't need chasing. The ones that feel easy, mutual, and deeply fulfilling. And sometimes, the most important relationship you rebuild is the one with yourself. You realize that you don't need a long contact list to feel whole. You don't need to pour your heart into people who only meet you halfway. You just need to ask yourself, who truly adds to my life now? Who makes me feel seen, heard, and valued? If the list is short, that's perfectly fine. Because what you lose in numbers, you gain in peace. And peace at this stage in life is priceless. Reason 4, your time becomes more precious than ever. One of the greatest shifts that happens as we grow older is this. We finally understand just how precious our time really is. In our younger years, it's easy to believe there's always more time, more days to catch up, more years to chase dreams, more chances to fix what's broken. We give our time away freely, sometimes to people who didn't deserve it, sometimes to things that didn't fulfill us. But somewhere along the way, that changes. By the time you're in your 70s or beyond, every hour feels different. There's a quiet awareness that time is no longer something to waste. And with that awareness comes a powerful question. Am I spending my time in ways that truly make me happy? This is where many friendships start to fall away. Not because of bitterness, but because the math of life changes. Friendships, no matter how old, require time. Time for phone calls you may not feel like making. Time for visits that leave you drained instead of energized. Time spent listening to the same old stories, or complaints that never seem to end. And slowly you begin to realize, I don't have to give my time away just to keep up appearances. Richard, now in his early 80s, faced this exact crossroad. Once his days were filled with dinners, card games, and weekend get-togethers. It felt natural, expected, even necessary. But as the years passed, those gatherings began to feel different. The conversations grew repetitive, the laughter a little forced. Some friends seemed more interested in gossip than connection. One afternoon, sitting through yet another long lunch that left him exhausted instead of uplifted, Richard had a simple but life-changing thought. Why am I still doing this? And that's when everything shifted. He gave himself permission to stop showing up out of habit, to stop saying yes to plans that no longer brought him joy. Instead, he chose differently. He spent his mornings walking slowly through the park, listening to the birds instead of voices that drained him. He dove into books he'd always meant to read, but never had the time for. He even learned something new, gardening, something he could do quietly, peacefully, on his own terms. And the most surprising part? He didn't feel lonely. He felt free, freer than he had in years. That's what happens when you finally understand the value of your own time. You stop filling your calendar just because you can. You stop answering every call, attending every lunch, or forcing conversations that don't fill your soul. Instead, you protect your time like the treasure it is. You give it to what truly matters, to moments, activities, and people who lift you up. And you learn that saying no to others is really saying yes to yourself. So if you've ever sat through a conversation and thought, I wish I were anywhere else, listen to that voice. It's your soul reminding you. You've earned the right to spend your time exactly as you choose, and every moment you protect is a gift you give yourself. Reason 5, true companionship comes from within. There's a belief many of us grow up with, that happiness depends on the people around us, that to be fulfilled, we need a steady circle of friends, constant conversation, someone always there to fill the quiet. But something powerful happens as you grow older. You begin to see that the most meaningful companionship isn't found in others. It's found in yourself. By the time you reach your 70s, you've lived through more seasons than you can count. You've been a parent, a partner, a friend, maybe even a caregiver. You've poured your heart into others for decades. And somewhere along that journey, you may have forgotten the one person who truly deserves your company. You. See, the world tells us to fear being alone, that solitude means loneliness. But that's simply not true. There's a quiet difference between being alone and feeling lonely, and once you feel it, everything changes. Eleanor, now 76, knows this truth well. For most of her life, she stayed busy. Brunches with friends, weekend phone calls, group outings. Her calendar was always full, and for a long time that felt like a good thing. But somewhere along the way, it started to drain her. The conversations grew shallow, the energy forced. Worse, she noticed how often she changed pieces of herself just to fit into the moment. She'd hold her tongue when she disagreed, laugh when she didn't feel like laughing, just to keep the peace. And one afternoon, she asked herself, why am I doing this? That was the day she stopped. She chose, for the first time, to spend real time with herself. She took long walks, no phone, no company, just the rhythm of her own breath. She sat in quiet cafes with a book, savoring the stillness. She listened, not to others, but to the thoughts she'd pushed aside for years. And in that stillness, Eleanor found something precious. A kind of peace she hadn't known in decades. She realized she wasn't lonely at all. She was simply finally comfortable in her own company. That's what so many people miss. The most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you build with yourself. When you stop relying on others to fill your time, entertain you, or tell you who you are, you discover your own capacity for joy. You see your own strength. You hear your own wisdom. And here's the beauty of it. Once you're truly comfortable with yourself, everything else changes. You no longer feel the need to chase friendships out of habit. You no longer tolerate relationships that drain you. And when people do come into your life, they're drawn to you. Not because you need them, but because you've created a life so full, they want to be part of it. True companionship isn't about how many people are around you. It's about how deeply you enjoy the quiet moments with yourself. So if you've ever worried that pulling back from friendships means you'll be alone, take heart. You're not losing anything. You're finally making space to find yourself again. And once you do, you'll realize you were never truly alone, because the best company you'll ever have has been with you all along. Reason 6, letting go, opens the door to a more fulfilling life. Here's a truth few people talk about. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in your 70s is let go. Let go of friendships that drain you more than they lift you. Let go of the pressure to maintain connections simply because they've always been there. Let go of the belief that your worth is tied to how many people surround you. Because the moment you release what no longer serves you, you create space. Space for peace, space for joy, space for a life that truly feels like yours. For years, James believed the secret to aging well was staying busy. He was 78, active in every local group you could name, bridge clubs, weekly coffee catch-ups, volunteer meetings. From the outside, it looked like the perfect retirement. Social, engaged, connected. But if you asked James how he really felt, the answer might surprise you. He was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the exhaustion that comes from giving your time, your energy, and your attention to things that no longer bring you joy. Over time, the conversations felt hollow. The meetups felt like obligations, not choices. And deep down, James knew he wasn't doing this because it made him happy. He was doing it because it's what everyone told him he should do. Until one day he stopped. He took a good, honest look at his calendar and asked himself, what here truly makes me feel alive? And one by one, he let the rest go. He stopped attending the weekly coffee gatherings that had turned into complaint sessions. He skipped the card games that felt more like a chore than a joy. And in that space, something incredible happened. James rediscovered what he loved. He spent quiet mornings in his garden, listening to the birds instead of meaningless chatter. He picked up painting, something he hadn't touched in decades. He felt lighter, freer, and for the first time in a long while, truly fulfilled. That's the gift of letting go. It's not about isolation. It's not about giving up on people. It's about choosing yourself, your time, your joy, your peace. When you stop clinging to friendships out of habit or guilt, you open your life to what truly matters. You stop wasting energy on relationships that don't feed your soul. And instead, you fill your days with experiences that do. Here's the surprising part. When you finally make that shift, the loneliness you feared never comes. Because you're no longer chasing connection. You're living fully in the right people. The ones who truly align with your energy and values find their way to you naturally. So if you've ever sat there wondering, is it okay to step back from friendships that no longer feel right? The answer is yes. Not only is it okay, it might just be the kindest, most freeing thing you'll ever do for yourself. Because at this stage of life, you've earned the right to stop explaining yourself. You've earned the right to choose peace over obligation. And most of all, you've earned the right to live the rest of your days on your own terms. Final thoughts. Embracing the freedom of this stage in life. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with one simple reminder. Life after 70 isn't about having more. It's about having what truly matters. For so much of our lives, we're taught that friendships equal happiness, that the more people we have around us, the more successful, the more fulfilled we'll feel. But here's what aging gracefully teaches us. It's not the quantity of people that matters. It's the quality of the peace you create for yourself. By now, you've heard 6 powerful reasons why friendships naturally fade in importance after 70. And hopefully you've started to see that this isn't loss. It's liberation. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. You no longer carry the burden of social obligations that drain your energy. You get to choose peace over small talk, simplicity over forced connections, and fulfillment over frustration. The world doesn't tell you this often enough, but it's perfectly okay to outgrow friendships. It's healthy to prioritize your well-being, and it's more than enough to be your own best companion. Think back on your own journey, all the people who have come and gone, the friends who once felt inseparable but drifted away, the moments you gave more than you got, the times you stayed silent just to keep the peace. Now imagine what life feels like when you no longer carry those weights, when every relationship in your life is there because it lifts you, not because it drains you. That's what this stage of life is meant to be. Lighter, freer, richer, in all the ways that truly count. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today, it's this. You don't need a room full of people to feel complete. You don't need constant invitations to feel wanted. And you certainly don't need anyone else's validation to know your worth. You've already lived through the years of proving yourself. Now is your time to live for yourself. And here's the beautiful part. The more comfortable you become in your own company, the more the world opens up in surprising ways. You start to see beauty in quiet moments. You rediscover passions that got buried under years of shoulds and musts. You wake up each morning knowing you are enough, just as you are. So I'll leave you with a question to reflect on. What would your days look like if you stopped trying to hold on to friendships that no longer serve you and started creating a life that truly fulfills you? What new joys could you discover? What peace could you reclaim? And how might your heart feel when you finally let go and trust that what's meant for you will always stay? If this message resonated with you, I'd truly love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share. What stood out to you most today? Have you already started this journey of letting go? Or is this the reminder you needed to finally give yourself permission? Your story matters. And reading your words always brings encouragement, not just to me, but to so many others walking this same path. And if this video opened your eyes or gave you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need this reminder too. Because the truth is, we're all learning how to walk this next chapter. And it's messages like this that help us know we're not alone. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Here's to embracing the freedom, the joy, and the quiet power of aging on your own terms. I'll see you in the next video.